Hello, you are listening to the Let's Talk Valdosta podcast on Metro 17, the City of Valdosta's government channel. And I'm your host, Sharah Denton, and I am with the lovely Lauren Hurley. Lauren, what is your title with the City of Valdosta?
I'm the Zoning Administrator of the City of Valdosta.
Awesome. And what are the main responsibilities of the Zoning Division?
So the Zoning Division implements the regulations, the land development regulations, which were adopted in 2009. So before that, we had a set of land development regulations, and since then, Council adopted a new version that we still use today. So that covers anything from new development, residential new development, commercial new development, everything in between, any type of new construction or addition to an existing construction. That covers signs. It covers parking lots, things like that. So when someone, say, is doing a new business, they submit plans. We look at the parking, we look at the impervious surface area, which is anywhere rooftop pavement where rainwater cannot reach the ground. We cover exterior building materials. There are overlay districts, there's historic district. So all of that is covered under the Land Development Regulations Title II, which is what the zoning department enforces. Okay.
And how does your division impact the daily lives of our residents here in Valdosta?
So say someone was adding a typical request we get is someone adding, say, an accessory building onto their residential property. They would come into the zoning office, they would get a zoning approval letter, which basically tells them how much square footage they can have in an additional structure, how close it can be to their property lines, and how close it can be to their main structure. If someone's building a new construction, a house, we give them the setbacks, which is how far they can be from the property lines. We ensure that it meets the requirements of square footage. We have all types of regulations that deal with residential, but also with commercial. There's a whole different ballgame when you get into commercial, because you have to think about parking regulations, standards that we hold commercial businesses to whenever they're doing new development.
Okay. And I know we can talk all day about that, so yeah. I want to kind of shift gears here for a little bit, but talk about what are some of your frequently asked, I can't say that word apparently today, but let's dive into some of the frequently asked questions of zoning. What are some of the most common questions or concerns you hear from residents?
Okay, so we have two sections like I was talking about earlier. Things change whenever you're talking about residential versus commercial. With residential, a lot of the times it's people wanting to add on to their homes, or people wanting to put accessory structures on their property. Maybe it's even questions about like short-term rentals, things like that. So we get a lot of questions about that. Basically, with zoning, you have a lot of different ranges of zoning districts within a residential zoning, and then a lot in commercial. So it can be anywhere from R6, which is residential 6,000 square foot lots, up to 15,000 square foot lots. All those regulations change based on the zoning district. So it's kind of hard to answer. Like if you ask me a specific question and your neighbor asked me, it might not be the same answer.
Right.
So it's important when you're doing anything to your house or anything to your commercial property that you call the zoning office, so we can give you specific details about what can and cannot be done and what's within those regulations. And they're not that strict or stringent. It's just there's they're all for a reason. They go along with the fire code, they go along with the building code, so
the whole process,
it's all tied together,
right?
So
well, speaking of that, and this has been kind of my interest, like focus a little bit the last couple of weeks with your department in particular, and it's called First Steps.
Yes. And
First Steps is very eye-opening to me as someone that's not a business owner, but what would you say inspired the creation of the First Step Initiative? What does that look like for citizens?
Yeah, I think a couple of, maybe it was developed or adopted during the last building official's term. So essentially when businesses were submitting plans, they would have to go back and forth and say, oh, I didn't know that zoning needed this. I didn't know that fire needed this. I didn't know that utilities needed this information. So they would submit plans, but they would all we would have to turn them back and say, hey, this is our requirement. You need to meet our requirement. Right. So a first step meeting is for any business owner that wants to do anything, they can call the zoning office. We schedule them a first step meeting. They're open every Thursday morning. We have a schedule. We send it out to all the departments the Friday before that next week, so everyone can do their research on the property and prepare their notes. So say you have a business and you want to open it as a restaurant. You call, you set up a first step. I, from a zoning standpoint, would tell you the parking regulations, the setbacks, things like that. The engineering department would give you feedback on what you can do based on their regulations. The utilities department would be able to tell you what kind of water main is there, how far it is from where you need to connect. The fire department is there, the building official is there, the plans coordinator is there, you have landscaping to think about. So for someone that's just starting a business, and even someone that's had a business for a long time, depending on the piece of property, those regulations, will give them foresight into what may be an issue, what they're going to have to address, some things that we require of them. And it's a great, aptly named first step. Before you turn in your plans, come meet with us. It's completely free. We give lots of feedback, and people usually leave there feeling a lot more comfortable, hiring an engineer to do the work, because that is expensive. And in some cases, what they're wanting to do may not be exactly possible, or it may not be within their budget, because maybe somebody thought, oh, I can do that, and all I have to do is X, Y, and Z. But then they didn't think about the rest of the letters of the alphabet.
So it covers up pretty much the scope of what they need to do to be put in place their plan.
Yeah,
basically
to submit their plans in order to build out what they want. And we can also give them suggestions of, you can't do it this way, but this is how you could do it. So it helps a lot with, like I said, not only first-time business owners, but even engineers that have done it for a long time. Maybe there's a road project that's coming up that will affect their development that they don't know about.
Right, good point.
So we have a lot of things, we know that they may not know that will affect their property.
So would you say that even though it's not required, it's probably suggested for people to look into prior to?
Highly suggested. We never leave there without people thanking us for, taking the time. But really, honestly, it cuts down their time. It cuts down our time, because we have to give them that feedback one way or another. We would way rather them know beforehand than after the fact, after an engineer has drawn up a full set of plans that needs to be drastically modified. So,
and the money that goes into it.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lauren. Is there anything else you would like to add about zoning? And
zoning also covers signs. That's something that we have had a lot of. We just got a zoning officer. So, signs are one of those things that every business has a right to. A wall sign, a freestanding sign, a certain amount of square footage. So for business owners, I encourage them to call us and ask what they can have, what they're allowed to have before they put something up and spend the money, and it's, not something that's allowed. We typically don't have something that's just, unless it's a huge banner on the side of a building that draws attention. But people just don't know that there's a sign permit application and that there are requirements for what they can and cannot have. So.
We have some theme music back there. All right. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for your time. I know your time is very precious. And how can people get more information? Where can they find information to contact your department?
On the city website, it lists our phone number. It's 229-259-3563. You can also email any of us. Our emails are on the website. Also, if you want to know what zoning district you're in, there's an interactive map on the website. So you can click on that. You can find your property. You can see what it's zoned. I will say the LDR is very dense, and if you're not used to looking at it, you might as well just call us and ask us very specific questions instead of having to read 200 pages that will put you to sleep. So we are the ones that have to look at that and enforce it. So don't fret. Don't feel like you're a burden calling our office. We are more than happy to help. We would rather have a discussion about it with property owners, so that they are put in the right direction. So.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. And I love working with you. I just think you're amazing.
I love working with you too.
Lauren is just a bolt of fresh air. I just love her. But thank you again for joining us on the podcast, and hopefully we can have you come back later on.
Would love it.
Thank you.